introduction, an extended introduction to the film. So we're winging it, but I'm imagining the questions in your head, the questions you will have in 94 minutes when the film's done. So the first question is, why make this film? Well, and this is where Nicholas comes in. I'll explain in a minute. That I had done a film called The Music of Strangers with Yo-Yo Ma a few years ago. But when I was just beginning that project, probably 7 years ago, one day at lunch, when I was just getting to know Yo-Yo, I happened to ask him, how did you figure out how to be a famous person? And without hesitating, he said, Mr. Rogers taught me. And I kind of chuckled, and he said, I'm not making a joke, that I went on his show as a young man, and he saw that I was struggling with fame. And he went out of his way to mentor me over years into how to use fame as a positive force. And it's something that I could use for social change and positivity in the culture, and not something that was going to weigh me down. And when he finished saying that, the light bulb went off in my head. And I thought, this is not the Mr. Rogers, I remember being 2 and 3 and 4 years old. It's just a different way of thinking about him. And that every time he came up in the ensuing years, something about it surprised me. Just rediscovering him as an adult. I have kids now, kind of thinking about him in a different way. Just something about him made me very curious. And somehow, and I don't even remember how, I found myself late at night on YouTube watching Mr. Rogers videos. And I came across some of his commencement addresses, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like this, it wasn't that this was a nostalgic voice that I wanted to go back and revisit. It was, this is a voice I don't hear in our culture today at all. Like, I want more of that. And I woke up the next morning and I turned to my wife and I said, so, what do you think about Mr. Rogers documentary? And she's a children's librarian, so she was biased. She said, I love that idea. And then the next thing I did was I called Nicholas. Nicholas is Yo-Yo's son. He's a friend of mine and he's a filmmaker. And he was on the show twice, which I'm going to ask him about because that's my chance. But he knew the Rogers, and I said, you knew Fred Rogers. What do you think of an idea of a film about Mr. Rogers?
And it's really lovely when someone asks you a question that's really easy to answer. I think even before Morgan finished the question, the words came tumbling out of my mouth. Yes, 1,000 times yes, I think this is a great idea. Let's start today, let's start yesterday. At which point I think Morgan said, well, I think this is a lovely thing, but it's going to be Mr. Rogers is a timeless figure. We can take our time with this. Let's think of this as something which we come back to in those moments where there's space. And I said, okay, I guess that makes sense. It was a lovely idea at the beginning, but of course, as we started talking about it, it took on, I would say, a little bit of a life of its own.
Yeah, enthusiasm became urgency. That's true. So the first thing we did was Nicholas and I went down to Pittsburgh, and Fred Rogers was from Littrow, Pennsylvania, just down the road from Pittsburgh. But the show was filmed in Pittsburgh, and I came to realize that in Pittsburgh, he's not just a hometown hero, he's a hometown god. Anybody from Pittsburgh knows they have a very unique relationship with Fred Rogers. Yeah, there you go. And we met with the company and the family, and we said, we want to make this film, but if we make it, you have to trust us completely. You can't control anything. You just have to let us make this film. But our pitch is this, and we told this to Joanne Rogers, who you will meet in the film, Fred's widow, who's now 92, she's amazing, and who, I might as well put in a plug now, she's going to be on Jimmy Fallon on Tuesday. She's coming to town to do that, which...
And she's very excited, so
that's going to be interesting. But I said to her, I don't want to make a film about the biography of Fred Rogers. I want to make a film about the ideas of Fred Rogers. And she smiled. She said, I think that's a wonderful idea. Fred had always said, if anybody made a biography of his life, it would be the most boring film of all time. So with their blessing, finally, we began making this film. And this was more than 2 years ago.
That's right, February 2016.
Yeah, when we started. Everything about it kind of took on a pace, and we ended up, I've been making films for a very long time. This month is the 25th anniversary of me starting my first documentary. So it's my silver anniversary. Is that right? So,
Hence the hair.
Okay. This film in a way was like the most personal, most kind of, it was the film I needed to make for myself. And what was great about it was, as we started building the team to work on it, Nicholas and Karen Capitosta, our other producer, and our 2 amazing editors, Jeff Malmberg and Aaron Wickenden, and it was like we all visited the land of make-believe together. Like, we all spent this time together thinking about these messages and these ideas and this positivity and this sincerity and this, these qualities. And I think it was the best place we could have spent 2017 was in the land of make-believe.
There's something very, very, I think we all, those of us who have memories of Mr. Rogers from television, right? He had this very unique ability to be intimate with you as a viewer, and yet universal in his ability to speak to all sorts of different people. And I think, all of us had that, both Morgan is sort of Gen 1, Mr. Rogers, would you say? Yeah.
I was born in 1967, so I was there at the beginning.
At the very beginning, And you have an intimate memory of Mr. Rogers. I have an intimate memory of Mr. Rogers. And as we started talking about the project, we realized that was something shared by so many. And I think that's part of what gave it that pace, where something that we thought would take 5 years ended up, is here with you 2.5 years after we first went down and spoke about it. So.
Well, it's also interesting because Mr. Rogers is a cultural figure that we have a relationship with, those of us who grew up watching him, unlike anybody else. Like, next to our family, it might be the oldest relationship we have. And so I was watching him when I was 1 and 2 and 3. My relationship with him predates my memories. So there's something about making the film, and hopefully about watching the film, for those of you who grew up watching it, that makes you revisit a part of yourself you haven't thought about in a very long time. And hopefully that's a good thing. So now is my opportunity, because I've never had the opportunity to ask you. So Nicholas was on the show twice. I never got to meet Fred Rogers, so I felt like I knew him, because I was his TV friend. But you have to tell them about visiting the show.
Oh gosh. So I went on when I was 6 years old, and I have to be honest with you, I was terrified. There's something very safe about someone who's, 10 inches tall and inside a television. And when that person is 3 feet taller than you and in 3 dimensions, it's pretty overwhelming. And I think, going on the show, which was such a thrill for someone who so admired this man, you would have thought that Fred would have bounded over and tried to make things all right, etc. But he had a canny understanding of how children's minds worked. And what he did instead was give me space. He gave me space to find my way to him. And it took something like 45 minutes, which, if any of you have ever spent time on a set, is not really time that you sort of give space. But he did. And so for 45 minutes, he let me sort of get comfortable. And then he came up and we had a conversation. And I played a small piece with my father at the age of 6, which I was very enthused about. And it was a very special memory. It's interesting because the coda to the story is 10 years later, he asked me to come on the show again because he was talking about growing up. He wanted to talk about his television friends that have grown up. And he asked me to play with my father again. And at this point, he was someone that I trusted and cared for. But playing with my dad was something that was terrifying. And I think it's only someone like him again who just said, I think this is something that you will be glad that you did, and I think you should have the confidence to do it. And those are the only 2 times I've ever played publicly with my father. I don't regret either of them. But, you know, he was a very special man, and I feel very privileged to know him in person. And I hope that you feel like you get a chance to know him as a person in watching this film tonight.
I wish I had a picture of your bowl cut.
Yeah. Quite a turtleneck and a bowl cut, not mine is sort of
So maybe we could talk just a bit about kind of his philosophy. You know, we tried to digest it down. I mean, so you will learn that it's not a surprise. He was a Presbyterian minister, and he was obviously influenced by his Christian faith. But he was somebody who was deeply curious about all religions. He ended up learning many different languages. He would often read the Bible every morning in Greek or Hebrew. He studied Judaism, he studied Islam, he studied Buddhism. And what he really tried to do was find a unifying humanist quality to all of those religions. So he never mentioned God on the show, but he was really trying to get beyond, beyond the trappings or, the ideas of any singular religion, and really speak to young children about the most basic human ideas of how to be a person, how to treat other people, how to live together in a neighborhood. And what I kind of digested that down to, my bumper sticker for it is radical kindness. That's how I think about it. Somebody posted something today that I saw that Mr. Rogers' 3 lessons for success. You can see that. Lesson number 1, be kind. Lesson number 2, be kind. Lesson number 3, be kind. So, but I don't think he would have talked about radical kindness. I think the idea he talked about the most was grace. It was this idea of grace in the original, purest sense, which is doing good to others even if they don't deserve it. So you put goodness out in the world, not because it's a quid pro quo, not because you were told to do it, not because somebody even needs it, but even if they don't need it, even if they don't deserve it, you still need to put that positivity out there in the world. And if everybody does that, we'll have a very healthy neighborhood and a very healthy society. And he saw that as the virtuous circle that would make a neighborhood or a society work well.
Yeah, I think as we've taken this film to a number of different festivals and screenings around the country, I think that idea of kindness towards everyone has resonated more and more. It's so easy in this moment to think that a film is for one group of people or for another group of people, or is meant to endorse a set of adult values. And I think that Fred endorsed a set of more basic values and a set of more universal values. And in that way, his invitation to kindness was one that was meant to both encourage and challenge any child that they had the power to be good people, to be loved, to be lovable, but they also had the responsibility to be good people and to be loved and to be lovable. And I think that, at least for the two of us, I don't mean to speak for you, as we think about how this film speaks to us as a country right now, I think we hope that it speaks to the fact that there are those values that are strong and that can still unify us as a country. And I hope that at least some of that heartfelt belief from the two of us makes it through in the film, because it's certainly what we take away from Fred's words for leader.
That was good. What are the other questions they would ask us after? What are the other questions anybody has that you can throw out? But
That was very quick.
Okay. Yes.
What was the most surprising thing that you learned about him?
The most surprising thing. The thing about Fred Rogers is everything was surprising, but nothing was shocking. And these are a bunch of things that aren't even in the film that I'll tell you now. That as you know, he spoke many languages. He was a seeker. He studied everything. He was a pacifist. He was a vegetarian. Who his line was, he said, "I never want to eat anything with a mother." So, which is very Mr. Rogers. He was just somebody of incredible kind of understanding, but also intelligence and willpower. And in many ways, you know, my first hesitancy about making the film in the first place is, in many quarters, Mr. Rogers is like the quintessential two-dimensional punchline. Even the positivity is what you see on coffee mugs, and is there a real person in there? And the answer is yes. That the fundamental question that we got some version of every time we talked to somebody about this film was, is he for real? You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I think he is surprising, but he's very much for real. He's very much a real person. And I think that actually makes his struggle to do good works that much more relatable. The other thing that Joanne Rogers said to me at the very beginning of starting this film was, don't make Fred into a saint. And I think part of why she said that was, to make Fred Rogers into a saint is to do the same thing everybody's always done, which is to not give him dimensionality, to not understand that he was a real person that had worked hard and struggled and doubted and made mistakes to do the good works he did. The other part of that, I think, is that to sanctify somebody like Fred Rogers, and ever there's a character who you could slip into easy sanctification, it would probably be Mr. Rogers. But the reason to resist that is to understand that if he struggled and worked hard to do everything he did, that it makes us share that sense of responsibility to do the same thing. That we can't leave it to people like Fred Rogers to take care of it for us, that we all share some responsibility in that.
I know we have to run in a moment, so I'm going to make a very bold plea. If this film speaks to you at the end of it, obviously we would love it if you tell your friends to come see it, but even more so, my very, very bold plea is to say, actually take somebody. Because there's something about experiencing a film, going on these emotional journeys where you want to hold someone's hand and be with them as they go through that. And I hope that that speaks to you certainly in the way that it does to us. And I hope that you will consider taking somebody in the coming weeks to see this film again, because it's meant a lot to us, even if that seems like it's also, beneficial to the film.
Ever a producer.